Welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell, and I'm here to help you excel through the stories you tell. But being a compelling business storyteller is hard for some because it takes focused, deliberate practice. That's why I consult, teach, coach, and speak internationally, helping leaders just like you become confident and persuasive communicators, to help you connect with audiences like you never have before, and to excite them to action. I would be delighted to bring you and your team one of my in-person or virtual storytelling mastery classes or mastery course. Or you can even take advantage of my ABTs of Selling online training right now. Either way, please let me know when I can bring the business of story to your world. And until then, enjoy today's show. I'm so glad you're here. I've been running the ABTs of Selling online course now for about 4 months, and I've had hundreds of sales leaders go through the short training. If you use the ABT clearly to state the problem-solution dynamic from your prospect's point of view, then we've seen sales absolutely take off. But regardless of the framework, what stories do you tell during these turbulent times of COVID, social unrest, and economic turmoil that will truly connect with and convert your prospects?
We really are focusing right now on talking about how much cost we will save people, which is really a minor thing in the grand scheme of what we do. Like if you have a, routing software for your sales team, it does save you money because they drive less, right? You knew how much you were paying them for mileage before, and you know how much after. So you can see that they're driving fewer miles, and that'll pay for the software, right? And so we drive that home with our customers right now. Like this pays for itself in gas savings. The real savings is that your sales reps sell more, right? That's what matters, is your sales reps, that time that they're not zigzagging around town, but they're like efficiently covering their best customers because they have this tool now. That's where the value is. But we push the actual hard cost savings. That jumps out at people right now because times are tight.
Steve Benson is CEO and founder of Badger Maps, the #1 app in the App Store for outside and field salespeople. After receiving his MBA from Stanford, Steve joined Google, where he became Google Enterprise's top sales executive globally in 2009. In 2012, Steve founded Badger Maps for outside and field salespeople to upgrade existing CRMs with mapping, routing, and scheduling. Steve is also launching a new sales training platform on Badger Maps that, in full disclosure, will be featuring my ABTs of Selling short online course. Steve also hosts the Outside Sales Talk podcast and is the president of the Sales Hall of Fame. Today, Steve and I will explore sales leadership storytelling and how to use it to really enable sales, how stories need to change in COVID times, and how to be transparent and clear in communication and why that is so important for sales leadership. So please welcome to the Business of Story, Stephen Benson. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Park. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, now we are going to be talking about storytelling, outside sales, in this new weirdo normal we have of the ongoing pandemic, and maybe even the fallacy that people are all stuck behind screens. You're seeing something completely different out there. So welcome to the show, and let's just dive right into that. I was under the impression that outside sales folks were not outside, that they were still stuck at home on their screens like we are right now and trying to sell in this virtual way. But before this recording started, you kind of corrected me on that.
Yeah, well, I think, especially early on in the pandemic, a lot of things really shut down, right? If you were selling beer to bars, you couldn't do that anymore because the bars were closed. If you were selling tires to tire stores, you were closed. If you were selling lasers to places that do, laser hair removal, they all that stuff was shut. And now all that stuff is open. So as soon as it opened, the field salespeople were able to start in their industry selling again. As soon as the dentist offices opened back up, the people that sell to dentists could start selling to them again. Kind of across and basically everything's open now. Now that doesn't mean certain businesses didn't go out of business. Some restaurants, some bars, they closed, last April and have never opened up again. But the person that was selling them their beer, they're selling beer to other people as well at this point. So on the balance, if you sold beer to bars, you're back out in the field selling beer to bars again because the bars are open.
Well, you've always been a specialist in this outside sales. What got you into that particular line of selling and coaching and training in that area?
Well, I mean, that was my background professionally. Is I had done a lot of outside sales, and then my last role, I was at Google, and I was one of the products that I was working with a lot was the Google Maps API. So which means basically that Google has a product that they allow other people to use maps on their websites or in their products. So kind of Google Maps can be a layer in your software effectively. And that works in a browser, it works on a mobile device. And so, my job was to sell that Google Maps API to people that had software that need maps, right? So a company like, eBay or something uses Google Maps all over their website. They need to pay Google for that. And you can imagine most websites, a lot of websites have a map somewhere. And if it's an important part of the website, then they have to pay Google a lot for it. And so that was my job. And so I understood what the modern mapping technology could do and what was kind of becoming available. Because, I started Badger Maps 10 years ago. This is 2011. So, iPhones are pretty new. They were pretty slow still. The mapping capabilities were smaller. But I could kind of see where the puck was headed on things like, mobile connectivity, how fast the internet was on mobile devices, and what types of software was going to be able to be built over the next 5 years following that. And so I saw this problem that I understood really well because I was in field sales, the figuring out a field salesperson, figuring out their route, their schedule for the week, figuring out who to focus on given where they already had to be because they had a 10 a.m. and a 2 p.m. How else should they fill out their day with prospects and other people that they're engaged with? Building out a plan for that. That was clearly a mobile problem.
That is Badger's Map. Let's identify what that is. Our listeners don't know.
Yeah, that's the product. That's the core problem that we set out to solve was this routing and scheduling problem that field salespeople have.
Were you doing that at Google? I mean, or is it something that you experienced at Google and you said, hey, there's a need here?
Yeah. So Google doesn't make software like that. They give other pieces of software the ability to insert maps into their software. So today, the Badger Map is built on top of the maps in the Badger Map come from Google, basically. So what the Badger Map is doing is connecting with your CRM and giving you instant access to that data, like the addresses of all your customers and all the other data about all your customers, the other fields in your CRM, exposing it in a map-based environment that then you can build a route on, you can figure out your schedule, that sort of thing, collect data from the field in a really seamless way and send it back to the CRM so the data actually gets captured in real time. 10 years later, we're doing a bunch of things for field salespeople. But the problems that we started out to solve were problems that hadn't been solved before, but I could see that they could be solved given the direction the technology was developing. And at first, we could only do little pieces of it, but then the technology did catch up. I think when we started Badger, we knew what the specs were going to be on the next iPad that was going to be released, and you would really be able to run cool software on that. 10 years later, that was super slow, and it's a paperweight. But back then, that enabled a whole new type of software to be built.
So in essence, I can use Badger Map as an outside field salesperson to be able to organize my day, send the information back to the CRM, and just make me more efficient traveling from place to place, giving me the locations and all that sort of thing. Why'd you call it Badger?
Because I went to the University of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And also like in 2011, that Honey Badger video was very viral. It was one of the most viral videos in the web. Everyone's seen it. Everyone remembers it. And the badger is just a good animal to pair with salespeople. It's tenacious, it's aggressive, it's strong, and things like mammals are very memorable. I think it's great when a company is named after a noun. I hate adjectives. I hate spelling existing words wrong. I hate abbreviations. I like nouns because they're very memorable. Like if I say, the Green Rhinoceros consulting firm, you're going to remember that. You can't help but envision a green rhinoceros, right? And so it sticks with you because if I say green rhinoceros, try not to envision a green rhinoceros. And that's a sticky memory, right? Whereas if I'm like, oh, the name of this the name of this company is Quickly, spelled with an EY at the end. You're like, Quickly. You can't there's nothing to envision there. It's just like it's an adjective. It's not or is it an adverb? I don't even know. I think that's an adverb.
You're playing to the theater of the mind. Yeah. See, so right now you're being confused when they start messing with these words because now our pattern-seeking brain is going, what the hell? But if you can spell out green rhinoceros, man, you can picture that immediately. You were at University of Wisconsin, then went and got your MBA at Stanford. Is that right?
Right.
And then from Stanford went to Google?
No, from Stanford, then I went to IBM and then a software company called Autonomy and then to Google.
And how long were you at Google?
About 4 years. I had to stay until the end of the year, even though I had the idea for Badger in my mind at the time, but I had to stay at the company until the end of the year. Because of golden handcuff reasons, they have ways to keep you there.
Yeah. Now, when COVID hit, and how many users did you have on Badger, and did it impact your business because people couldn't go outside initially?
Oh yeah, definitely impacted our business because a lot of our customers either put their field sales teams on furlough or fired them, or their businesses just got crushed, right? Depending on the company. And so we probably lost 40% of our customers or they shut things down immediately, right? Like in the first 3 months after COVID hit, they shut off because they weren't out in the field, they didn't need it. But then a bunch of them came back and we were able to sell. We were selling to other customers who were, we kind of continued a similar growth rate, but we kept losing customers to COVID. And so we were kind of just flat for all of 2020 after the initial shock of it. But we're back to kind of where we started, I guess. Our revenue levels are at the same place as they were in March of 2020, just now. So we're finally caught up again.
And what were the biggest things you learned coming out of COVID, going through it and coming out of it?
The biggest things I've learned, well, that a global pandemic is really bad for everyone's businesses. No, I think. I think that there were a ton of new challenges and things to learn. I think you manage a business differently in good times than bad, right? And you have to change the way you think about what KPIs you're measuring. How to approach all the different challenges that this time brings you. How to deal with how do you make payroll when revenues are falling, right? How do you how do you reduce costs? How do you approach? Do you want to? There were a lot of hard choices. You want to we could have done a round of layoffs. We could have lowered people's salaries. We could have furloughed people. We chose to lower salaries for a period of time, and then we were able to bump them back up. But so we didn't actually have to go through a round of layoffs. We were pretty fortunate on that one.
What was the hardest decision you had to make during all this, and how did that turn out?
The hardest decision probably was deciding what to do about making payroll, basically, because our revenue had fallen right when COVID hit. So March and April and May, we lost a lot of our revenue, but our costs didn't go down, obviously, right? And we kind of run the business at break even, right? So because we're a growing business, you generally we're not taking money out. There's not like money I'm taking off the table every year, right? Like it's like you put it all back into the company at this stage in a software company's life. So when revenue fell, but there were still just as many costs that were there. So the money had to come from somewhere. And so deciding where the money would come from was probably the hardest things and hardest thing there. And like I said, we did we lowered salaries for a period of time, and that's how by about 25%. So pretty material, right? But, the way I approached that was basically talking to people like, well, here are the choices. We can lay off 25% of the people, or we can we can lower everyone's salary by 25%. And people generally were very supportive of the not firing people, getting just, tighten the belts and getting through the hard times.
Yeah. Now you've got a new initiative underway, the Badger Sales University. We're going to talk a little bit about what's all in that. But did that idea come out of COVID? Is that an innovation, or is it something you were working on?
No, I mean, I guess it came out of COVID. Given I was sitting in my living room thinking about how to approach this problem, and it was during COVID. So I guess it came out of COVID. Yeah, but I guess more than it coming out of COVID, it just came from me seeing a problem like there. Well, first a little background. What is Badger Sales University? It's a tool for salespeople to have access to really high quality vetted sales training and educational videos on demand, just on their mobile or on their computer. So quick way to describe it, it's Netflix, except all that's on there is sales training videos. And there's several products like, similar to Netflix, but that are focused more on training. But this one's just focused on sales training specifically. So it's really very clean for a salesperson. And we've been able to bring together some of the top sales thought leaders like yourself, obviously, are on there. But we've been fortunate enough to bring together some of the top sales leaders, and a lot of that was just that I already knew a lot of who the top sales thought leaders and people that you would want to come speak at your kickoff, or who you'd want to hire to come and teach your sales team something, or do a consulting engagement to evaluate how your business could sell more. I knew a lot of those people because a few years back I started the Sales Hall of Fame. And so, and I don't do all that much for it, but I started it. And so, it's, even though I've kind of passed that on to other people to run, because I started it, I knew all these people basically who, and a lot of them just already had great sales content, and maybe they were selling it on their website. They were selling the CDs on their web or the DVDs on their website behind a firewall or whatever for $500, but that's not really their business for the most part. For the most part, these guys write books and give speeches and come in and consult and teach people things. So for them, to put it on a platform like this was an attractive thing because it gets their stuff out there more, and and they already had it. So it's a marketing thing, and it also monetizes. I mean, it's like Netflix, you have to pay for it, but it's only like, it's $29.50 a month. So it's pretty cheap to get access to all this content that normally, you'd pay, $10,000 to have one of these guys come in and give a speech of this nature to your sales team. So getting access to it for $29.50 a month is pretty good.
Yeah. Steve, there are so many platforms out there already, LinkedIn and all that. So how is this different, or why would people want to come to this one?
Nobody is pulled together the best salespeople who teach things, right? And LinkedIn has a great product for teaching people things. I'm actually a teacher on there, like I'm a professor on there. They haven't necessarily brought together the best teachers, and like YouTube is probably the biggest way to do this already. Like if there's so much great content on YouTube, the challenge is parsing it. Like if you looked up negotiation training on YouTube, you'd get 1.5 million hits.
I just searched sales training videos on Google, and you come up with over 500 million hits.
Yeah,
it's a crowded field
and that's
out
the
there.
thing, right? Yeah, and most of it sucks. Like, the 50th video down is an amazing an amazing negotiation training video, but no one has the ability to kind of parse that. And the ones that Google puts up first aren't necessarily the best ones. They're the ones that their algorithm has lifted to the top for whatever reason. Maybe they're the funniest ones,
SEO.
or maybe they're the right. And sometimes it's random, right? Like, I mean, I've on my podcast, for example, most of the videos, most of the podcasts we do, so we put every podcast I do, I put up a video. Most of them get like 500 views or something, but sometimes they just get 25,000 views, and they're at the top of the list of something. They're not any better or worse than the other ones. It's kind of random, And like, it's that algorithm can't, the algorithm can't handpick who the best guys are the way I can, right? Like I know who the top 100 guys and women are out there who teach things in sales. I have had them on my podcast. I've known them for years. Like, it's relationships like you and I have that is the reason I know them. It's like, you've been on my podcast. Now I'm on yours. Like, I know who these people are. And so I can send them an email and be like, hey, you're selling videos on your website. Do you want to put them into a platform like this? And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, I show them what I'm doing. They're like, yeah, it's a great idea. Whereas, and sometimes their stuff's already on YouTube, right? So you could have just, if you knew who the best person was out there to teach you how to do a follow-up after a sales call and all the things to think about, you could just look that person up and look up their video, or you could just, go to their website and buy their training for, $500 for the DVD or whatever they're selling it for, right? So sometimes it's only $100 behind a paywall and you just watch it in real time. Whatever. Point being, the average person doesn't know who really is an expert in all these different things, right? And so, and who's made great videos. That's the other thing, is sometimes someone who's a real expert has written a great book on something and they have like no content out there on the video side that's well produced. And so, they really can't, they wouldn't be in there, but their stuff is the best, but they just haven't really put it out there. Anyway, bottom line is this is curated. And so why would someone do this? It's similar to like Masterclass teaches people a bunch of things. I don't know if that's a smaller business than LinkedIn Learning, obviously, so people probably haven't heard of it as much. But Masterclass is like they teach you a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not professional. It's like how to cook or how the economy works or how to organize your home, yeah. Things like things that are really interesting and important, and people have this service to learn stuff from Masterclass. This is like that, but only about sales stuff. And Masterclass doesn't do sales stuff, obviously. They're more of a consumer thing. So this is why is this special or interesting? It's like we're pulling in the best people, like Masterclass pulls in the best people to teach they'll get someone like, I don't know who they have teaching their organization class, but it'll be someone like Marie Kondo, right? They'll pull the best person, like they'll pull Paul Krugman as an economist in to teach you things. I like that I'm giving you a commercial for them right now. But like they pull in all these really talented people, and they know who those talented people are, and they bring it all together, and then they teach you these things as a service.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing, but just for sales training, which to my knowledge, no one's actually done a good job at. There are a few products out there, but in general, they tend to be focused on highlighting one person and their skills. And this is different because we're pulling in, lots and lots of top field sales or top sales trainers. Most of the time, if it's one person's, they tend to be just really selling themselves. Whereas this is really, we're trying to take the best stuff from everyone.
Yeah. So a new program out that people could take advantage of. And I want to go back to where we began when we were talking about COVID, the pandemic, and this disruption that we've all been through. Outside sales folks are back outside again. And I was going to ask you, have things changed, or how have they changed, or how do they have to story differently, or do they have to story differently out there now, given this new weirdo normal we're in?
The stories do change, and I think it becomes more and more about the customer. Like if there's anything we've learned from all this, it's that we should have a renewed more empathy and more customer focus. I think a lot of people have pulled back a little. It's harder to get in front of them. It's harder to get them to engage. A lot of people's businesses are in tighter times, so you have to have a tighter ROI story. Or, here is the value that you're going to get from this product. And it's all, I think the world has been moving in that direction for 15 years as people have more and more access to information about the different products and services that are available to them. But if anything, these times accelerated a lot of that.
So people talk a lot about understanding and having empathy and being customer focused, which seems to me like should be a normal, natural thing. Yet when we all get into that fog of war, of selling, of in the trenches, it seems like it goes out the window. It seems like, okay, yeah, I know all that and I'm going to try and do that. But once we get in across from that person, we have a hard time doing that. Listening and finding that empathy, we are going for the sale. Why is that, do you think? Because it seems like it should be so human to sell that way.
I think it's because people feel a little desperate, right? It's harder to make your number. It's harder to make goals right now. Everything, the stock market aside, it's a tight economy. The rich have gotten richer in the stock market for sure, but the real estate market everything. Assets have basically become worth more, and how much of that is due to inflation versus how much of that is due to just more money sloshing around buying them, creating more demand, and how much of that is just certain companies are worth a lot more. Like Apple's more than doubled during the course of the pandemic. Like they're selling about the same number of phones, but they're worth way more by like $1 trillion. How much of that is because more people just have more money because they're not spending on other things, just they want to invest in it, and that's the company. That's one of the companies they think of, and so money has flowed into it. That's one thing, but and how much of it is just people are using their phones more, so they think the future they're going to be willing to pay for it more. Maybe there's been an economic shift. How much of it's hard to measure this stuff, but on the balance, people's belts are tighter, right? And especially most businesses are tighter. If you were
That's what I was
selling,
going to say. Most B2B selling are a lot tighter.
yeah, like restaurants are selling less food, bars are selling less beer. Like walk up and down Main Street and kind of try to empathize with each business that you pass as you walk up and down the street, the ones that aren't shuttered, and and you can imagine as times are tighter, and that flows through the whole economy. Like the guy that sells tires is selling fewer tires because people are driving less. The guy that sells beer at a bar is selling less beer because there's fewer people in the bar. The restaurant is selling, they've spaced out their tables more, and they're selling less food. Across the entire economy, things are just a little tougher. And as salespeople, you want to people have less time because they've tightened up. They're often doing more with less. And so you really need a strong ROI story. Why in a strong story on why are you, Mr. Customer, better off getting this and taking the time and energy to deal with it right now than not? Why is this better? How is this going to improve you? So, well, like for me, right, we really are focusing right now on talking about how much cost we will save people, which is really a minor thing in the grand scheme of what we do. Like if you have a routing software for your sales team, it does save you money because they drive less, right? You knew how much you were paying them for mileage before, and you know how much after, so you can see that they're driving fewer miles, and that'll pay for the software, right? And so we drive that home with our customers right now. Like this pays for itself in gas savings. The real savings is that your sales reps sell more, right? That's what matters, is your sales reps, that time that they're not zigzagging around town, but they're like efficiently covering their best customers because they have this tool now. That's where the value is. Sure, they're saving time, they're saving gas, but the value is in the sales. But we push the actual hard cost savings because that jumps out at people right now because times are tight.
They are that indeed. But you're seeing it come back some. So that's a good sign for you.
Yeah, a ton. I mean, we're back to where we started, but I don't think every company is back to where they started, and some companies are ahead of where they started. So this has affected different people in different ways. But I'd say on the balance, as we look across, and I talk to a lot of like sales leaders and stuff, just because we have a lot of customers, and I try to keep in touch with them and talk to them. And on the balance, my analysis is that things are happening. The sales teams are out in the field. They're making sales. Just everything's crammed down a bit. Like we're not in the good times right now, right? It's like everyone's pinched a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm and sure, are there industries that are doing great? Yeah, for sure. That haven't been affected at all. It's great to be Netflix. It's great to be Zoom. It's great to be, there are some winners here, no doubt. But on the balance, and because the people that use our software they are field salespeople that sell to B2B, right? So they're kind of like, they're an interesting point of understanding of what's going on in the economy, because like the guy that sells to dentists kind of he can give you a feel for what's going on with all the dentist offices. The guy that sells to tire stores can give you a feel of what's going on with all the tire stores, right? And so everything across the board just feels tight. It's hard to
Yeah.
breathe a little bit right now across the board.
So Badger Maps is for that field sales, that outside salesperson. Is Badger Sales University just for outside sales folks?
Oh, no, it's for all salespeople. Whether you're in Badger Maps is only for, like you said, it's only for field salespeople because of what it does. But if you're a retail salesperson, you also have to overcome objections. So like our training videos on overcoming objections are valuable to you. If you're a inside salesperson, you also have to prospect. And so the prospecting videos are going to be helpful for you. Like the sales skills and are I think kind of used across all these different types of salespeople in very similar ways. It's just, are you doing it in person versus are you doing it over the phone versus are you doing it in a store?
Yeah. Well, in the storytelling segment that I'm doing on there, and thank you again for inviting me into Badger Sales University, is focused on the and button there for the ABT, this simple narrative framework that I have found so powerful. And of course, you can use that in all sales, inside, outside, upside, downside, any way you like to. So thanks for having me there. How can
Absolutely.
people learn more about you, and how can they find the program?
Best way to learn about me and get in touch with me, LinkedIn, just look up Steve Benson, Badger Maps. You'll find me. Best way to learn about Badger Maps, if you're in field sales, want to better understand all the different things we do for field salespeople, is just go onto the website, badgermapping.com, poke around, and we have people that'll help you out. We have a free trial. For Sales University, same thing. Just go to badgermapping.com and click on Sales University. It's all available. There's free trials for the Sales University too, so it's like kind of a no-brainer to go look at the good stuff, on a free trial basis, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
We've gathered some great stuff for you, so check it out.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for taking the time to be in on the show today. Really glad to have you here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a ton for having me, Park.
And thank you all for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. Share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. Check out Badger Maps if you are out there as a field salesperson and you're trying to find your way around town to just become way more efficient in that. And of course, the new Badger Sales University. So honored to be a part of that with the ABTs of Selling course that you can get there. And I've got the companion book too, The Narrative Gym for Business, which you can get a print or Kindle version on Amazon right now. So feel free to grab those while you're out there. Until next week, when we will have another amazing sales and story artist right here for you like Steve. Remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.